rumors started surfacing about Jaden's concerns regarding the relationship between Diddy and his dad, revealing that Jaden had walked in on meetings between his father and Diddy. These encounters didn't seem like mere catch-ups between old friends.
You're gonna hear about my party, they're gonna be shutting them down, they're gonna probably be arresting me, doing all types of crazy things just because we wanna have a good time.
Diddy had every room taped and bugged. Diddy had, yo, bruh, can you imagine? He had every room taped and bugged, and they found little bugs or little tape recorders. I mean, little those micro projectors or whatever like that, or video cameras. They found them in the house, bro. So by them having those things in the house, and people know there's drugs, there's alcohol, there's loose women, there's loose men, woman on woman, man on man, all kind of crazy shit. Bruh, they just wondering who or when they're gonna let this stuff be known.
What if I told you that one of the most powerful figures in the music industry is now at the center of what could become the most explosive trial in Hollywood history? A case not just about one man's downfall, but about what's been happening behind the scenes of elite parties, private retreats, and industry-backed silence for decades. We're not just talking about allegations anymore. This is a full-blown federal case involving racketeering, trafficking, and a decades-long pattern of manipulation that could expose not only the man once known as Puff Daddy, but an entire infrastructure built on secrecy and control. The story goes deeper than celebrity gossip and legal drama. Behind the polished red carpets and flashy endorsements is a network of influence that few have dared to question until now. At the center of it all stands Shawn "Diddy" Combs, a mogul who built an empire, shaped music culture, and made millions believe he was untouchable. But now prosecutors believe they found a crack in that armor. A timeline of private events that were anything but innocent. Parties described as creative retreats allegedly turned into something darker. Scenes involving manipulation, silence, and hidden devices. Former friends are testifying. Rumors that were once dismissed are now sworn statements. And for the first time, federal investigators are using advanced metadata, architectural analysis, and personal audio recordings to build a case that threatens to expose not just one man, but the mechanics of a lifestyle carefully curated to avoid scrutiny.
How can you support your father? How do you support him moving forward?
This isn't just another celebrity scandal, it's something far more dangerous. And as each day in court reveals new evidence, one thing becomes terrifyingly clear. This trial might uncover secrets that the industry was never meant to confront. So the question isn't whether Diddy is guilty or not. The real question is, how deep does this go? And how many powerful people are holding their breath right now, hoping their names won't be next? As investigators began to pull back the curtain on Diddy's so-called creative retreats, a disturbing pattern started to emerge, one that wasn't about spontaneous fun or artistic inspiration, but about surveillance, manipulation, and control. Multiple sources, some speaking publicly and others under legal protection, described a chilling discovery. Every room at these elite gatherings was allegedly equipped with hidden devices, micro cameras, audio bugs, and other tech designed not for security, but for silent observation. According to insiders close to the case, these weren't the kind of setups you'd expect from someone trying to protect their property. They were surgical, strategically placed to avoid detection while capturing everything. In some cases, guests discovered small devices tucked behind decorative panels, buried within light fixtures, or hidden inside objects that seemed ordinary. Alarm clocks, smoke detectors, even vases. Whispers started surfacing about how Diddy had every room wired, and not just in his main properties, but also at rented villas, event spaces, and even hotel suites during major industry weekends. Some of these devices allegedly recorded guests engaging in highly private, often compromising behavior, intimate encounters, drug use, emotional breakdowns, moments no one expected to be captured.
At trial, Combs will ditch the jail garb and wear ordinary clothes. As his lawyers argue, the evidence shows consenting adults being intimate in their own way.
Now, as far as jury selection goes, I think the biggest takeaway for me is that both sides expect to have all of this done in the matter of 3 days. Now, given just how high profile this trial is, I was kind of stunned that they seem very confident that they will be able to seat a jury in that amount of time.
The most unsettling part, these recordings were never disclosed, never talked about, yet insiders claim they were cataloged, stored, and possibly used as leverage. The idea wasn't just about voyeurism, it was about power. If you had footage of someone in their most vulnerable state, you didn't need to threaten them with lawyers. You just needed them to know that the footage existed. The fear of exposure was enough to keep people compliant. Even worse, attendees now coming forward say they were never told about surveillance, never signed waivers, and never gave consent, making the alleged recordings not just unethical, but criminal. This wasn't a case of overcautious security. It was systematic, invasive, and meticulously executed. And as the feds dig deeper, these devices could become central to the prosecution's strategy, offering both motive and method for a much darker operation. Because if Diddy really had eyes and ears in every room, the question isn't just what he saw, but what he did with what he saw, and who helped him do it. And then, quietly, another rumor began to float, one that didn't come from tabloids, but from whispers within the inner circle. Jaden Smith, the son of Will Smith, had allegedly walked in on one of these strange meetings between his father and Diddy. No one knows exactly what he saw, but sources say it didn't look like two old friends catching up. Whatever it was, it left Jaden with serious concerns. Concerns he reportedly voiced behind closed doors before stepping away from the spotlight for a while. Just when it seemed like the case against Diddy couldn't get any darker, a surprising and unlikely figure stepped into the spotlight: Orlando Brown. Best known for his early career in family-friendly television, Brown had faded from the mainstream in recent years, battling personal struggles and legal issues that made many dismiss him as unreliable. But now, Brown might be holding the most damaging evidence in the entire case, evidence that was never meant to exist. While attending several of Diddy's private events, Brown claims he was asked, like all guests, to surrender his phone at the entrance, a practice that had become standard under the guise of privacy and exclusivity.
What came out of today's hearing? Number one, the government acknowledged that they offered Combs a plea deal. Combs acknowledged he has no interest in taking that. They're going to move forward with the trial. They also talked about the jury selection process, which one legal expert I spoke to said is probably the most important thing that you want to pay close attention to before the actual trial starts.
But what Diddy's team didn't know was that Brown brought a second hidden phone, a device he used to record over 2 hours of audio across 3 separate weekends. He didn't just capture random conversations. Brown documented the layout of the homes, the movement of staff through secret hallways, and chilling descriptions of rooms that didn't appear on any publicly filed blueprint. He described thick fabric partitions that appeared and disappeared overnight, audio-visual setups hidden in utility closets, and a bizarre, almost clinical tone among organizers who spoke in hushed codes. When federal agents later seized the device, their digital analysts matched every audio file to internal timestamps and cross-referenced those with rotor logs and Wi-Fi handshakes taken from the property's surveillance network, confirming that Brown's phone was exactly where he said it was at the exact time he claimed. The voice memos don't just offer a timeline. They provide atmosphere, detail, and commentary that brings the alleged manipulation to life in a way cold evidence can't. Brown narrates everything: the fake smiles, the moment guests disappear into certain hallways, the equipment that seems designed not to capture art, but to erase accountability. Prosecutors say the memos corroborate witness statements from others who described being manipulated or coerced during these events. But what makes Brown's recordings so dangerous to Diddy's defense is that they weren't staged or recorded with legal battles in mind. They're raw, real-time reflections from someone simply documenting what he saw and felt in the moment. And even though the defense is working hard to discredit him based on past behavior, the technical verification of his recordings is irrefutable. Every log, every rotor connection, every background noise has lined up. Whether he meant to or not, Orlando Brown may have turned himself into the most critical witness in a case that could shatter more than just one man's legacy. It could redefine the way the industry views privacy, power, and protection.
At the center of it all are so-called freak-offs, orchestrated erotic activities where Diddy allegedly directed men and women in X-rated performances. Many were said to be unknowingly filmed and blackmailed. Purportedly, victims, some underage, were controlled using threats, violence, narcotics, and money. Raids on Diddy's homes uncovered videos, firearms, and curiously, over 1,000 bottles of baby oil and lubricant.
To the outside world, the gatherings hosted by Diddy were painted as exclusive creative retreats, private invite-only escapes, where artists, producers, models, and influencers could unwind, collaborate, and recharge away from the noise of the public eye. But to those who've now come forward, many under oath or protected status, those so-called retreats were anything but relaxing. What really went on behind those luxury estate gates is starting to look like a calculated system of control, where the line between consent and coercion was deliberately blurred. Guests weren't just turning in their phones, they were entering an environment designed to monitor, manipulate, and overwhelm. Testimonies describe a consistent pattern: drinks that hit harder than expected, private rooms with no way to exit unnoticed, and a subtle but constant pressure to participate in activities that ranged from bizarre to disturbing. Some were reportedly promised career boosts or introductions in exchange for joining the vibe, while others were allegedly threatened, directly or indirectly, if they resisted. And it wasn't just women. Men, too, were reportedly drawn into compromising situations. Details emerging from court filings suggest that party organizers operated with military-like precision. Custom lighting systems known as heartbeat mode were installed to create a hypnotic atmosphere in guest wings, and rooms were arranged to create natural choke points, areas where people could be ushered, separated, and observed without realizing it. Surveillance tech was paired with layout tricks, such as fabric partitions and tunnel-like hallways, to ensure that guests couldn't move freely without crossing monitored zones.
On September 16, 2024, music mogul Shawn "Diddy" Combs was arrested in New York City and charged with racketeering, trafficking by force, fraud, or coercion, and transportation to engage in relations for money. Prosecutors allege Diddy ran a criminal enterprise involving forced labor, kidnapping, and bribery.
One witness described the feeling as stepping into a funhouse that slowly becomes a trap. These weren't parties, they were productions, complete with staff trained not to protect guests, but to maintain the illusion of safety while ensuring no one broke the unwritten rules. Music played constantly, masking any private conversations, and the energy was always kept high, almost aggressively so, making it difficult for anyone to pull away or even think clearly. The more that investigators uncover, the clearer it becomes that these events may have been meticulously orchestrated for more than just pleasure. They were environments where the usual boundaries of choice and consequence were intentionally eroded. If the allegations prove true, these retreats weren't escapes from the industry. They were reflections of its darkest corners, engineered by someone who understood exactly how to hide behind charm, power, and plausible deniability. What started as a series of civil lawsuits and internet whispers has now escalated into one of the most high-profile federal criminal trials the entertainment world has ever seen, with Shawn "Diddy" Combs sitting at the center of it all, not as a music mogul or cultural icon, but as a defendant facing charges so serious they could strip away his entire legacy. Federal prosecutors have officially charged Combs with trafficking, racketeering, and conspiracy spanning decades, building a case that alleges he used his wealth, status, and network of enablers to trap and exploit both women and men under the guise of mentorship, creativity, and fame. These aren't vague accusations, they're backed by a web of digital evidence, including location metadata.
The allegations are disturbing.
Our youngest victim at the time of the occurrence was 9 years old. We have an individual who was 14 years old. We have one who was 15.
Internal building schematics and corroborated testimony from more than a dozen individuals who say they were manipulated, drugged, recorded, or worse. But the case gets even more complicated when you realize this isn't just about isolated events. It's about a consistent, structured pattern of abuse that the prosecution claims was hidden behind NDAs, event secrecy, and the culture of silence that protects powerful figures in the entertainment industry. Over 70 civil lawsuits filed across 3 decades are now being revisited in light of new evidence, many of which include eerily similar accounts: exclusive invites, confiscated devices, intoxicants laced with unknown substances, and invitations to private sessions that became traumatic experiences. Diddy's legal team, meanwhile, is painting a different picture, arguing that everything that occurred at these events involved consenting adults, and that the government is simply folding salacious claims into a narrative meant to destroy a black success story. His lawyers are trying to frame the case as one of political motivation, cultural bias, and sensationalism, but federal prosecutors have gone on record to say that the evidence they've compiled, including Orlando Brown's recordings, router logs, event schedules, and financial ledgers, points to something systematic and inescapable. If convicted, Diddy could face decades in prison and massive financial losses as more victims come forward and civil cases move to trial. But beyond just the personal consequences, this trial has the potential to permanently shift how private industry events are regulated, how NDAs are enforced, and how digital evidence is treated in court. For Diddy, this trial isn't just about guilt or innocence, it's about survival, reputation, and whether decades of calculated secrecy can hold up against the raw truth now pouring into public view. The stakes couldn't be higher, not just for him, but for every powerful figure who ever believed that what happened behind closed doors would stay there forever. As the spotlight intensifies and courtroom cameras begin capturing every move, one absence has become louder than any testimony: Diddy's family, once seen flanking him at red carpet events and award shows.
Where we hanging out and what we doing, we can't really disclose, but it's definitely a 15-year-old's dream. He signed to Usher.
I'm signed to Usher.
I had legal guardianship of Usher when you know he did his first album. I did Usher's first album.
His inner circle has grown noticeably quiet, and their physical absence at his most recent federal hearings has sparked questions that even his legal team can't deflect. When he entered court last week, dressed not in designer brands but in a beige jail-issued uniform, he seemed to search the room for familiar faces: his sons, his mother, his sister, all of whom had previously attended earlier proceedings. This time, no one was there. The media initially chalked it up to scheduling or privacy concerns, but insiders are whispering about something deeper: emotional exhaustion, reputational damage, and private concerns about the severity of the charges. Those closest to Diddy are reportedly torn between loyalty and self-preservation, especially as new evidence emerges linking his behavior not just to professional circles, but to personal dynamics. Sources close to the family claim that the atmosphere behind closed doors has shifted from fierce support to quiet hesitation, with some privately questioning what else may come to light. Meanwhile, Diddy himself has rejected any notion of guilt, standing firm on his decision to plead not guilty despite a government offer that could have drastically reduced his prison time. When asked in court if he was declining the deal, he answered simply, "Yes, I do, Your Honor," with the same composure that once won over millions of fans. His lawyers claim he feels an obligation to represent more than himself, that he's standing for everyone who's ever felt targeted or wrongly accused by the system. But even this narrative, built to evoke public sympathy, can't fully distract from the growing silence around him. Former allies have distanced themselves. Brands once tied to his image are scrubbing collaborations quietly. And for a man who once controlled rooms with charisma and energy, he now finds himself in a room where no amount of fame can shift the outcome. The absence of family at this moment doesn't just feel symbolic. It feels like a crack in the armor, a signal that even those who once believed in him without question may be struggling with what they've heard, seen, or suspect.
The last hearing before Shawn Combs' trial starts, when he walked into federal court today, he appeared to be looking for his family. They've pretty much been at all of the hearings that I've been to, but there was no presence of his sons or his mother or his sister who had previously been at those hearings.
And as this trial unfolds, the emotional weight of that silence might prove more revealing than any piece of physical evidence presented in court. While Diddy's legal team battles inside the courtroom, a very different kind of war is being waged across the entertainment industry. A quiet, chaotic scramble behind the scenes to rewrite rules, cover liabilities, and distance high-profile players from any association with the toxic culture now being unearthed. As word of hidden surveillance, coerced intimacy, and sealed-off party zones spreads through the industry, major talent agencies, studios, and corporate sponsors are moving fast, not to support Diddy, but to protect themselves. Internal advisories are being circulated warning clients not to attend multi-day retreats unless clear device policies are disclosed in writing. Several prominent agencies have added clauses to contracts that prohibit any event requiring full phone surrender without alternative means of communication. Labels are re-evaluating artists with known ties to Diddy's past events, and some are even pausing collaborative releases until further notice. Behind the curtain, it's pure panic. Insurers are jacking up premiums on private events, demanding things like continuous camera coverage, independent medical personnel, and documented safety protocols. One insurer now requires that wristbands given to event guests do not restrict access to emergency exits or require staff approval to leave a room. For organizers who can't meet these new standards, policies are being canceled or reclassified as high risk, a label that not only affects cost, but signals a warning to artists, managers, and venues alike.
25 of the 120 individuals who are plaintiffs in these cases were minors at the time of the acts complained of.
Combs' lawyer said he denies any claim that he sexually abused anyone, including minors.
Even performance unions are stepping in, pushing for legislation that would mandate guest safety disclosures and limit the legal power of NDAs that bar individuals from reporting misconduct to authorities. The message is clear. The rules of the game have changed, and anyone unwilling to adapt is going to pay a price. Diddy's downfall didn't just reveal his alleged crimes, it exposed a framework that allowed them to exist. For years, private parties functioned outside the lines of professional conduct. Now, those blurred boundaries are becoming liabilities, and the very structure of how the entertainment elite network, party, and collaborate is being re-engineered under legal pressure. What's unfolding isn't just reputational fallout, it's systemic. Legal departments are updating internal crisis playbooks. High-end venues are being asked to submit architectural reviews for secret corridors and enclosed rooms, and a growing list of A-listers are quietly issuing instructions to their handlers. No more overnight retreats, no unsupervised industry invites, and no blind agreements. For an industry that once prided itself on mystery and exclusivity, the push now is toward transparency and oversight, because in this new era, silence isn't protection, it's a risk. As the Diddy trial barrels forward, its impact is already echoing far beyond one man's fate, shaking the very foundation of how the entertainment industry operates behind closed doors, and what was once considered normal is now being scrutinized through a much harsher lens. This case has become more than just a legal proceeding.
I don't have legal guardianship of him, but for the next 48 hours, he's with me. So, and we gonna go full crazy.
Going crazy.
It's a cultural inflection point, forcing an industry long fueled by secrecy, power imbalances, and glamorized excess to confront its most uncomfortable truths. For decades, private events were treated as sacred spaces for creativity and bonding, places where rules didn't apply and reputations were protected by proximity and fear. But now, as more victims come forward and more evidence links major players to systemic cover-ups, the industry is being pushed toward a permanent transformation. Lawmakers in several states are already drafting legislation that would mandate guest safety standards at private events hosted by celebrities or corporate sponsors. Proposals that include mandatory chaperones, written disclosure of all surveillance equipment, and the legal invalidation of any NDA that prevents reporting illegal activity. Music and talent unions are demanding clauses in future contracts that guarantee artists the right to exit an event at any time without forfeiting compensation or opportunities, while studios and streaming giants are quietly revising internal guidelines to define offset conduct as a factor in future casting and renewal decisions. Even real estate developers who once built secluded luxury estates for celebrity clients are being asked to design spaces with transparent corridors and limited access blind spots in direct response to what this trial has exposed. The entertainment insurance sector is undergoing a complete recalibration. Policies are being rewritten to include risk metrics based on guest treatment, device confiscation practices, and incident reporting structures. And underneath all of this, there's a cultural shift. Young artists and influencers are no longer buying into the myth that proximity to power is worth personal risk.
Shawn Diddy Combs is facing another long list of sexual misconduct allegations. He's in jail awaiting trials on charges of trafficking women for sex parties. He's pleaded not guilty. An attorney in Houston says he represents 120 people who say Combs abused them as well.
They're demanding transparency, protection, and autonomy, and they're being met with open arms by advocacy groups who were once ignored. What's happening now is the beginning of an industry-wide audit, one that no PR team can spin and no publicist can suppress. Whether Diddy is found guilty or not, the details that have surfaced are irreversible, and for every aspiring performer, background assistant, or silent victim who was once told to keep quiet quiet for the sake of their career. This moment marks the end of that silence. This trial may be unfolding inside a courtroom, but its verdict is already reshaping the unwritten rules of power and protection in entertainment, and the people watching from the sidelines are no longer afraid to ask who's next. As the trial of Shawn Diddy Combs moves closer to its defining moments, what's unfolding is no longer just about determining guilt or innocence. It's about forcing a reckoning that's long overdue. What started as whispers behind closed doors has erupted into a full-blown confrontation with an industry that, for years, chose profit over people, silence over accountability, and fame over justice. Diddy may be the one on trial, but this moment isn't just his alone. It belongs to every person who was told that what happened at the party wasn't their place to question, that speaking up meant losing everything, and that power was something you either submitted to or got crushed by. The allegations, the recordings, the metadata, the testimonies, they've all cracked open a reality that many suspected but few dared to speak out about. What makes this case uniquely powerful isn't just the scale of the accusations, but the precision of the evidence and the systemic nature of the manipulation it suggests. If a man of Diddy's stature could orchestrate such alleged operations in plain sight, protected by his name, his money, and the silence of others, then how many others have done the same, just without getting caught? How many victims never even realized they were being watched, tracked, or recorded? And how many careers were launched, maintained, or destroyed inside rooms where privacy was an illusion and freedom was conditional? This isn't just a story about one powerful man falling. It's about what we allow power to get away with when no one is watching, and what happens when suddenly someone is. The industry is watching, the public is watching, and more importantly, the next generation is watching. Artists, creators, and dreamers who want to believe that fame doesn't have to come with fear. The true impact of this trial won't be measured in years sentenced or settlements reached. It will be measured by how many people decide that silence is no longer the safest option. So as we await the jury's decision and the world debates the headlines, one truth lingers like smoke in the aftermath. If this much could be uncovered from one man's inner circle, what else still lies hidden in the shadows of power, waiting to be dragged into the light?